hear me? So I suppose I'll start with the story, because there's people in all of our careers in marine biology who have helped us. And I think I'm going to just take the opportunity to say a massive thank you to my hero, Mark Costello. When I was 3, I decided I was going to be a marine biologist like Minnie in this room. And by the time I was 12, I had driven everyone crazy in the local fish farms, and they let me work. And I used to save the money and go to Sherkin Island Marine Station and do marine courses. And when I was 18, I wasn't even 18, 17, my father cut an ad from New Scientist and posted it to me in school in Waterford. And it was a research opportunity with work that Mark was doing at the time in Trinity in using wrasse as cleaner fish in fish farms. And it looked incredible. It was at the time, I'm not going to say how old I am, but years ago it was the time of the ivermectin in shovel loads going into the fish farms, and Mark was leading the way. And I wrote my CV out by hand and sent it, and got this letter, which I still have, believe it or not, Mark, from Trinity saying, we'd like you to come and work with us for the summer. And not only did I learn about the use of wrasse as cleaner fish, but there were projects going on in freshwater mussels. I have to say it was one of the most amazing times of my life. And to Mark and to Catherine, just to say a huge thank you while I'm here. I always try now to help students out, and I always think of you helping me when I was that age. So there's no doubt I wouldn't be standing with you here in the fisheries control without that help. So just to say a huge thank you. And I think for everyone here, we all help students and we help people, but it really makes a difference in the future. So thank you very, very much. I'm actually going to start with a video, because I know when I was in marine biology, I didn't know much about the control side. And just to say, control is based on regulations, and regulations are based on evidence and are based on science. And very much in the European Union, while the policies go through all of the political side, the science is always key. So I'm just going to show you a tiny bit, I'm hoping I get this all to work beautifully, through sorry, where is it gone? I'll just get you to help, sorry. I'm just going to show you a little bit of a video just on the work that we do. Sorry, what was that? There it is.
The Common Fisheries Policy of the European Union offers a common framework for managing fishing resources and ensuring sustainable exploitation. Compliance to the rules is crucial to achieve sustainability. The European Fisheries Control Agency is an EU agency dedicated to ensuring highest standards of uniformity and effectiveness in control, inspection and compliance with the Common Fisheries Policy, including its external dimension. Underpinning the mission is the cooperation of the agency with the Member States and the Commission, and the assistance that the agency provides, improving compliance, transparency and harmonisation. EFCA brokers cooperation between Member States through coordinated control plans. They are established for specific fisheries and involve planning together, exchanging inspectors in multinational teams, and coordinating the deployment of national patrol vessels from the EFCA's headquarters in Vigo. The areas in which EFCA coordinates operations are the North Atlantic, North Sea, Baltic Sea, Western Waters, Eastern Atlantic and Mediterranean, Black Sea, and since 2024, the Indian Ocean. Furthermore, EFCA has its own inspection capacities with 3 chartered vessels as additional means to support Member States. Operational all year round, the fleet also meet the needs of multi-purpose operations in the context of the European Coast Guard cooperation with the other 2 maritime agencies. EFCA also assists the EU in the international dimension of the Common Fisheries Policy, cooperating with third countries and with regional fisheries management organisations, helping to combat illegal fishing.
The European Fisheries Control Agency works to the goals of our core mission and mandate, which is to promote the highest common standards for control, inspection and surveillance under the Common Fisheries Policy. What does this give us as sustainable fisheries, not just for now, but for future generations? It also gives us a level playing field for European operators, so that everybody in the fishing industry is treated equally wherever they may be operating. I'll switch back to the slides now. So it's a very corporate video, apologies, but it's just to give you a little bit of the idea of what we're doing and where we are, and particularly, I think, for everything that we've been saying in this conference so far on marine protected areas. Policy without control is a piece of paper. It's just, you can write a law, but if you don't implement it, then it's a nothingness. And laws, as they're coming along and are developing, you have to look at the control. So if we have a quick look here, the agency is 20 years old this year. We've been having 20-year birthday celebrations. We started in Spain in 2008, and in 2016, we realized very rapidly that in order to protect the oceans, protect everything to do with the fisheries, we can't do it on our own. There's absolutely no point in having Frontex running an aircraft that's just working in one area if we can't use the video footage for fisheries control. So in 2016, we extended the mandate. So with EMSA, Frontex and ourselves, we now are the European Coast Guard Functions Forum. So for all of the 11 functions under Coast Guard, we're doing all of those as well. We have a budget of 31 million, and I work as the Executive Director. The key aim is that everything has to be the same. Again, with the Common Fisheries Policy, if we look 20 years ago, every country was applying it differently. If you were fishing in France, in Portugal, I'm so sorry because I missed the talk from the Azores, and I travel there a lot for work. We do a lot of fisheries control from there. But in the Azores, in all of our different areas, both in the outermost areas of Europe and in the coastal states, things were very, very different. And for 20 years, the agency has been working to make sure that things are equal and harmonised across Europe. So for sustainability and a level playing field. One of the other things with control is that, the same as everybody here, we have to make choices with how we spend our money. We don't have unlimited resources, any of us. What's the most important thing that we can do? Where are the biggest risks? So when I start to look through this, we work with all of the control authorities in these joint deployment plans, looking 2 years before we start doing control to try to work out where are the highest risks. So if we look at marine protected areas, vulnerable marine ecosystems, we will be looking well in advance of what we're going to do and how we're going to work on it. And this is to harmonise, but it's also for cost efficiency. It's absolutely pointless if you've got a number of patrol vessels all operating in the same area or inspecting the same vessels. Also pointless if you're not targeting people or areas that are high risk. So we're very, very much risk-based. We have a lot of marine scientists who are working with us. We've managed to get some really good people from ISIS as well to make sure that we're doing it. But just to clearly show you who does what in the area, countries look after what's happening in their waters or territories. Our inspectors are union inspectors, so we can carry out inspections in waters or territories, but normally that is done by the member states. Member states are also responsible for vessels flying under their flag wherever they're fishing in the world. European Commission, as you're well aware, formulates the policy that's adapted, for example, in the CFP. And I know yesterday there was talk on the reform of the CFP, or the review, I think is the way that we look at it. And we've had the new control regulation, except we say new, but it's actually not that new anymore because it's over a year old. European Commission also carries out audits. The audits are done in countries to make sure that they're applying the CFP. The audits are not published, so they're done, and they're quite severe, the outcomes of them. They're not always publicly available, which is what is always leading to continuous improvement. And what do? We coordinate and assist the Member States and the European Commission. So where do we work? Well, we have the operational coordination. It'll probably give you the figures later on, but just to give you an idea of what we're involved in, last year we coordinated over 45,000 inspections. And of those, because of our risk-based, we have a very high hit rate, as you'd say, because we really are targeting. So we had over 5,000 infringements from those 45,000 inspections. We work under what's called serious infringements, and the way that it works is when you find a vessel that's doing something, that is then passed back to the member state, because in each of the countries, the court systems are different and it goes through the member state process. We then work in the international dimension. We have a project, it was called Pascal, it's now called WhatsApp, that's just started. We work with 13 countries in West Africa. We're developing for Central Africa, and then we have projects with Algeria, with the Mediterranean, and in the Indian Ocean under what's called the SWIAP project. These projects look with the countries at how their legal framework is working for fisheries control. But anyway, I'll tell you a little bit more about it later on. Then we work in systems to operations. So how do we work out what people are doing? What's the innovative ways? If we're looking at controlling areas, how do we do it? So this can be as basic at the moment. We've just run pilot projects with every single member state looking at the new OEM systems. So in every country in Europe, we've been putting the camera systems and electronic systems onto vessels and then taking the results of that. Everything that we do is transparent. So if you go onto our website, you will see all of that work that's happening on the camera systems, which includes the data protection, the artificial intelligence analysis, and everything that's there. You'll also see one on weighing, fish weighing. Where do we do fishing? We will also be looking at bycatch. We'll be looking at different projects. Things like the net measuring gauge came from EFCA, bringing in that harmonisation across. So we're always testing and trying new things, and I'll tell you about some of them in relation to the fishery restricted areas or MPAs later on. And they come into the innovation and cooperation side as well. Because again, different countries develop in different ways. So one member state may be very, very advanced in using UAVs or drones that can do a variety of things, and we can then take that information, learn from it, and share it so that people aren't reinventing the wheel. This is, I always hate the name actually, and you should try translating this into different languages. It's really hard to translate. The Joint Deployment Plan, but it's been called this for 20 years, so I'm not going to be able to change it. So this is how we work. We work with, so at the moment we have a number of campaigns. Let's say we have campaigns running, for example, if I talk about the Mediterranean. So we have the bluefin tuna campaign, it'll move to the common dolphin fish campaign. And they look in advance at the planning of deployment means based on risk assessment. So we'll be working with all of the Mediterranean countries that are working in the bluefin tuna area well in advance, looking at where are the highest risks. We also, at the moment on our vessels, we will have Tunisian and Turkish inspectors, so they'll also be looking to look at the bluefin tuna campaign, although it's coming to an end. And then you implement either short-term or long-term year-round campaigns, and then I think it was really from the California talk yesterday, we're learning, it's a continuous learning cycle. So the most important thing then is the assessment. Did this control work? Did we make a difference? Are the risks going down? Or did we do inspections and find nothing because we weren't inspecting properly, or how can we improve in the future? So it's continuous learning and continuous improvement. And you can see in some of the long-running campaigns, like the bluefin tuna campaign, we can see that the control that's working, but the detail of the control not. So the cameras that are in the cage transfers, everything is looked at. The cameras that are on the vessel, everything in that is very, very well controlled, and we can see a stock recovery there. So this just gives you an idea: 45,734 inspections, 4,823 suspected infringements. And you can see from the flags the countries that are worked there. So you can see, like at the moment, we've one vessel in the NAFO-NIAF. We would have American or Canadian inspectors on board. Sometimes Norwegian would be working with the Canadian and American inspectors for the NAFO-NIAF patrols. And then we'll be patrolling all of the vessels that are in that area, including if there were Russian vessels, will be looked at there, but the same in all of the different areas. The vessels are like floating universities, and the main aim is to have inspectors in. We never run without inspectors from a number of member states on board, so you can have different ones. We also have mid-range fixed-wing aircraft, both that we have from ourselves, but we use all of the Coast Guards and member states, as well as using front axes. And we have ORPAS systems that are on the vessels as well, which can check as well in advance coming up. Just to give you an idea of the international dimension, we always work in the JDPs to ensure that with the RFMOs that we have fisheries control. With the RFMOs, if you're aware, if we find infringements, it goes to the compliance committee and then goes through. So again, we have put in, from EFCA, we have chairs in some of the compliance committees who are helping with the reform of the compliance committees in the RFMOs. We also have, we do a lot of capacity building, looking at the legal framework in countries. Does the legal framework work? Do the fishery monitoring centres work? Is the inspector training up to standard? How can we help? How can we put patrol beams in there and then work with them? And then we also, Europe has a zero tolerance policy to IUU, so we will also work on the IUU missions to wherever the IUU missions are going in to audit the countries, leading to the yellow and red cards for fisheries products afterwards. So you can see some of the areas we cover. We do some work with Norway, Greenland and Iceland, but we're not in either of the polar regions at the moment. So in the innovation and cooperation, you can see the Coast Guard functions. And again, Coast Guard functions, if you see transshipment at sea, it can be people, it can be money, it can be fish. So we need to work together when we see things that are high risk. And this community, again, there's a website for people who are interested in starting to understand this. Between all of the countries in Europe, there's 400 bodies doing the different functions. So again, when you're working in this field, Oliver was here, and another person who I studied with when I was doing my PhD, we were in UCC together, who's fallen from research into the policy side of it recently and gave a great panel yesterday. I don't know if you want to say you've fallen into the dark side or we've fallen into the light. I don't know which way you say it. Maybe neither would say it's just a difference, a change. But this again, when you start to look at it, how do we work together? How, when somebody is going out a helicopter to do search and rescue, how can we then get the feed, the camera feed? And we have that set up with all of Europe. So any of the aircraft that are flying, the camera feed comes through not just to our coordination centres, but it also goes to the member states who are part of it. So in the bluefin tuna, any of the planes that are going out, whether they're out for humanitarian reasons, we can take those feeds and look at them to see, can we see illegal discarding? Can we see dead tuna in the towing operations, which you often see? What can we see that's there? And can we see vessels that are in fishing restricted areas who shouldn't be there? Because again, what is the point in having 30% of sea areas that are MPAs or fishing restricted areas and we don't control them? So again, we're able to look at that, and we do look at it, so I'll tell you a little bit more when we get there. We then start to look at control technologies. So we have agreements with the European Space Agency and SATSEN, looking at the Copernicus satellite system. So what we can do with satellite systems is we have, we're able to take images. So for, let's say, the Indian Ocean or any of the areas where you've got vast areas and protected areas, it's not just the satellite imagery, but you need to be able to analyze it. And we have specialists who are doing that. We also then, but again, I sound very confident saying this, but it's a journey. We stand on the shoulders of people who go before us, and we always have so much more to do. So the automatic behaviour monitoring at the moment, let's take the 87 VMEs that were designated. We've set up automatic behaviour monitoring for every single one of those. And the minute a vessel enters any of those areas at a fishing speed, the alarm goes off both in our coordination centre but in the member state as well. So for the flag vessel and the area where the VMEs are. And we're then able to send an aircraft, or if we're lucky, use satellite imagery in order to look at what's happening with that VME and who's entered it and what they're doing. And we can see it for other fishery restricted areas. We have integrated maritime services, so we use VMS, AIS overnight in some areas with the coastal radar systems that are around so that we can see where the vessels are and what they're doing. And then we have different Earth observation technologies, from either the high resolution optical, which you're really seeing the detail, to the synthetic aperture radar, which give you not so much a picture but an image of where vessels are. And you can check, are they dark, have they switched it on and off. Some of this information is done by Global Fishing Watch do it, but they do it on the AIS. Our information is much, much, much more granular and detailed. So we can see the relationships that we have that are there. When we start to look at what we're doing, with the marine protected areas and with the fishery restricted areas. We don't take them separately. We've taken them and put them in the joint deployment plans. So when we're doing the risk analysis, we're looking at these as part of that risk analysis process. And obviously, it can be very high risk depending on the areas that you go to. So the CFP rules are the compliance with fisheries restricted areas, including the MPAs. And again, if we're working with RFMOs, they're done and treated in the same area as this. We're doing the same thing: operational coordination, the training, the recognition, and then the provision of the systems. We're also looking at the innovative ways that we can work. So I'm going to take you through, if you don't mind, and I'm okay for time, sorry Mark, I'm keeping us on time. And I just know it's just wonderful to have such a variety of an audience from different sea areas, and I'm only talking about Europe, so apologies to the colleagues from the other parts. I'm going to just go through what we're doing in the different JDPs. So the first one is, if we look at the Baltic Sea, the North Sea and the Western waters, we have integrated maritime services and automated behaviour monitoring. We're carrying sea inspections and sightings, and then area surveillance, including sightings. So we get this mapping of the fishery restricted areas. We're putting it in the MPAinMSP. We have, as well as having the automatic monitoring, we also have a working group that's looking at what steps are being taken. When the alarms go off, what's the actions that are being taken? And then we have been running specific patrols to check, so both with ROPVs and with fixed wing aircraft, and we're finding the aircraft are exceptionally good for doing this. They can go through, we can do a huge number in 1 6-hour maritime patrol flight. In the North Sea Joint Deployment Plan, we also have real-time closures. So real-time closures are when the fishing is over a limit. These immediately go up on the website. We're also sending a message through to every fishing vessel, goes from the country, so that they're aware that a real-time closure has come. This comes from the member states. So this is, we've got real-time closures is for protecting vulnerable fish stocks, and they're temporary. So they come in, but we're able to implement them in a temporary method. Then if we look in the Western waters, you can see the map of these vulnerable maritime ecosystems, and this was fed from the science into the legislation, and has been, because we're based in Vigo, an area that there's a lot of discussion. But what we've done is we've put the 87 polygons in the MPAinMSP, and again, I suppose for myself and Oliver and Kylie, we worked with Cullen Warden, who would have been very, very instrumental in this as well. So what we can see is we will get visualization when vessels are close to the VMEs. We can see the follow-up actions from member states and send the aircraft out. And we have had a significant increase in operational activities in order to protect these. If we then look in the Mediterranean, you can see each of the different seamounts and protected areas. So we have 389 automated behaviour monitoring systems in the Mediterranean. In the Mediterranean, we have a lot more aircraft coverage because of the, because of the significant number of search and rescue incidences that are in the Mediterranean because of the current, I wouldn't say crisis, situation with migration. So there's an awful lot more information that we're getting in the Mediterranean, so you can see all of the different areas that are there. We're also trying stratospheric aircraft here soon. So stratospheric aircraft are, with satellites, you really get like a snapshot when the satellite moves. There are some geostationary satellites, but we're not using them as much and they're not always where you want them. So stratospheric aircraft you can send up for up to 2 weeks. It sits in the stratosphere and you can hone it on a specific point or specific area. So we're going to try and test that and see, are we going to get the imagery from that, and is it going to give us significant protection for these? These are really significant in the Mediterranean, and I think the talks yesterday highlighting the importance in the design of the areas to allow for the climate change refuges and for the movement of species. Once that goes into legislation, we will be here, we will be there, and we will be watching. So again, we can see the ABMs. We do it for all fishing vessels to a member state, but we're also able to look for non-European vessels that are coming in. So the controls, I'll just quickly skip on because I'm not brings me to the end of the whole talk, so I'll give it. So we can look at the detection of suspected infringements. So I just had a quick look to see how many suspected infringements we had last year and where they were. So out of the 5,000 suspected infringements is what we're getting. The number isn't that high. We had 185 suspected infringements which were in fisheries restricted areas. So these were people going into closed areas. And the vast majority of those were in the Mediterranean. But when there's suspected infringement, they're the ones that it went to the United States and was there. Anyway, I'm sorry. I hope I'm okay on time, Mark. And I love all of your questions because I imagine that there's going to be plenty of them. And just to say thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's so nice to be with marine biologists.
Great time.
I had till 9:40, but I thought there might be a few questions.
I'm sure there's a few questions. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So your questions are pretty sharp. Eliza, go first.
Yeah.
It gave a positive note about enforcement and control in the areas that we want to protect. Yesterday, and over the days, we heard a lot about the different rules, like the management rules in the MPAs. It looks like we have a way to enforce and to patrol and police those areas. Do you think that the problem with marine protected areas lies to the lack of management regulations, or really lacks the manpower to do the enforcement?
I never use the word problems. I think Mark will know I haven't changed since I was a kid. I believe that it's a journey. If we look at car accidents on the road, because regulation is the same whatever you're doing. When cars first came out, we had the lap belts, and people were killed because they weren't safe. Then somebody in Volvo here, I think actually, invented the 3-point seatbelt and donated it, and they brought it in as a law at the start of the cars. And then more people were safe, it was only in the front seats, and then it took another like 15, 20 years and it went to the back seats. And regulations are like that. Regulations have to be tested. So whenever you bring in a new law, it doesn't matter what it is, it is always challenged, every law. And that challenge then goes through the court systems, and then you end up with a better law. And that's how the regulation system works. So MPAs are relatively new in one way, and we're still in this system where the regulations are coming. So the regulations are coming, we're testing them, we're learning. We're learning that very small MPAs are very difficult to manage. We're learning of the issues that can have, I think some people were talking about, if you move them without proper planning. So it's a developing, evolving system that we're seeing in the regulations. So I wouldn't say so much problems, I'd say learnings. So we're on a journey of learnings with the MPAs, but there is, and what we're seeing from the science, we're seeing it yesterday, is really positive results from them. So we're here when the regulations come through. We will be here to stand in order to make sure that people are not fishing if they're not meant to be fishing in the restricted areas, and they're using the gear that they're meant to. The issue you're going to have is that MPAs, when they work, you're going to have an attraction, hopefully, and a growth in biodiversity and biomass, and then it's going to become lucrative to fish in them. But we will be ready and waiting for that as well. So yeah.
Jean-Luc. I should start timing the question.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll be quick. There's a problem with fish aggregating devices in the Western Indian Ocean and them being dark. And how do you deal with such a issue on something isn't a vessel but is the gear they use?
Yeah, so I have seen, and actually John saw it this week as well, some of the information on the recorded fish aggregating devices, and it's incredible. There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. When you see the ones, so the legislation that's there, so for the Indian Ocean fish aggregating devices, and not only just there, I mean, they're being used everywhere. You remove any that you find that are illegal. You use the satellite imageries for the visual ones to try to find out where they are, and you're running patrols for them. You also find that legal fishermen are telling you when they find illegal ones, so you get a self-regulating that's happening. But one of the biggest issues that we're getting complaints about with fish aggregating devices at the moment is the ones that are legal, that have a location finder, that are identified, are getting illegal fishermen attracted to fish aggregating devices. So that's another issue. It's almost a policing issue of fish aggregating devices. The whole thing with those, especially for an area the size of the Indian Ocean, we at the moment in the Indian Ocean are only under the specific control inspection program. We're doing land-based inspections with mixed inspector teams. We're not doing at-sea inspections, but we are highlighting it as the JDP. It is a really significant issue. There are hundreds of thousands of them out there. We've been taking a lot of unmarked illegal gear out of the Mediterranean, and the fishermen have been informing us where it is, and that's been helping us an awful lot. Our vessels are well able to go and just take it out, but it is a massive issue. From next January, in the control regulation, not only for fish aggregating devices, but all gear has to be marked. And that is going to have, we also have to have a reporting system for lost gear, and the agency will be taking all of those reports. So that will be interesting as well to see how that develops. Good question. It is a huge issue.
Thanks. The microphone here.
Me?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, thank you for your talk. I really enjoyed it. And I just have a question about the infringements. I'm assuming they're fines, they have to pay a fine probably. Do you think these infringements are enough to stop them from going back there? Or what are they actually?
It's a good question. So each country is different. And it's one of the areas that when each of us joined the European Union, we kept our legal systems. And it's unbelievably different. So in Ireland, I talked for Ireland because I was head of fisheries control there for nearly 12 years. In some cases with the serious infringements, the people receive jail sentences. Because in Ireland, it is a criminal system. So for every fisheries problem, there is a jury, but this is good and bad. It's like all things, because it's really bad, because if you are a fisheries inspector, and you're going to have to go in front of a jury and a huge case, it takes 6 years to come to court, and you have to prepare the evidence up to that standard, same as if you were a policeman doing a murder case. So it means that the level of evidence is really, really high, and the fishermen don't have the outcome for 6 years. So some fishermen can then build it into a business model. In other countries, let's say in Spain, where it's an administrative system, they get a fine really, really fast. And that is very dissuasive. And this comes to changing behaviors. So what you want to do in control is change behaviors. And a lot of the work on this is done through Harvard. I lecture with them at times in good regulatory behavior. And some of the things will say that actually if you do a smaller fine, but you do it immediately, then it's like speeding. You know, if you're caught speeding and you get the ticket immediately and you get the points, you don't speed again. Whereas if you have to wait 5 years, you're more likely for the next 5 years to be driving at 300 kilometers an hour down the motorways. So it's a human behavior change, but the legal systems that are in each country are there for fisheries regulation. And sorry, I wanted to point to you again because he's in this area. If you look at that website, coastguard.europa.eu, you find that the legislation for marine protected areas and fisheries restricted areas, some of it comes under the CFP and some of it comes under environmental law. So in one country, you can choose which way do you take it, and then you can go a criminal system or a different system. So this is not an easy area. It's a very interesting area, but complex and not harmonized, and unfortunately nothing to do with me.
So 2 hands up over there.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I work in Cape Verde. And I spend a lot of hours in the water with the fishermen. And I see myself, and also they tell me, a lot of illegal fishing. So I'd like to know if you have some comments on that.
So, I'll say Cabo Verde, but the Cabo Verde Islands are an area I met with your Minister of Fisheries recently. So we will be starting in November. I'm going for an opening of the WhatsApp project, and we'll be opening it in November, and I'll get your details, because I hope I can meet you when I'm there in November. We've already based aircraft down there, so we've had our aircraft flying in and out of the Cabo Verde Islands. and they're very much part of the West Africa project. So we will really, you will see us, I will be there in November, and you will see us. It is, I cannot wait to go. I'm going to try and visit as many of the islands as I can when I'm there. And I think it's a really special place. So just to say, yeah, it's, we'll be there in November. It is an area that we're really starting to focus on. We've done 5 years working with West African countries in setting up the FMCs and putting in the legislative background, including Cabo Verde, and we'll keep working on that. What is upsetting is hearing from the ministers there the decimation of fish stocks due to illegal fishing. We've done a lot for the last 5 or 6 years, but I'm really looking forward to being there in November, and we will be focused there on this. Thank you.
Just behind you, Adriano from the Azores.
Another one of my favourite islands, archipelagos in the world, yeah.
So I work in the Blue Azores program, which is the network of MPAs, and we are now preparing the management plans. And my eyes popped when you talked about behavior monitoring, because we are really interested in introducing the behavior management into the system. My question is, would EFCA be available to discuss the parameters you use for identifying fishing behaviors, so that we can align maybe with EFCA the parameters, so that we can introduce them into the management plans?
I was in Ponta Delgada maybe 10 days ago. So we go to the Azores. So I was there with our vessel and with I start apologies because I can't remember if I say regional government or autonomous government, with all of the, both from the mainland and from the Azores. We have, since I've been in the role for the last 4 years, been really doing a lot of work in the Azores. So a huge amount of work. The Azores have brought in a massive new number of fisheries inspectors, and we've had the pleasure of training them in EFCA. So there's been a massive amount of work, and again, a really spectacular part of the planet that really has, from, let's say, one of the things you look at are maritime rescue coordination centres, and both in the South Indian Ocean and across one in Reunion, where I've been, and in the Azores, the area of sea that they're covering is just huge. But we're there both with the vessels, with the aircraft, and with Portugal. So with Portugal and with the regional things, and just to say the Azores, again, in the last 5 years, have, I don't want to say quadrupled, but I think 4 times now the number of fisheries inspectors that are there, and there's been a very significant change. And again, if you look in our annual report, it's like 150 pages long, because we're fully transparent. You'll see some of the work from the Azores, and again, it's a really important area.
We better pause there. I know there's more hands up, but there's another 10 minutes of questions after the next 3 speakers. If you can hang on, we'll do that. And I don't have my brochure with me, but my program.
And I'll be here for the rest of the day, and I can talk about fisheries control for the next